So after we shared our story on why we decided to give up on Australia and sell everything we own and move to a different country, a huge amount of you have asked, why did we decide to settle in Malaysia and more specifically Penang, which is where we are today? So in this video, I'm going to share why we decided specifically on Penang and Malaysia, and also why you should consider it for a vacation destination if you're kind of sick of the whole Bali vibe and how touristy Bali's getting. So let's get into it. So for those who don't know who I am, my name is Jimmy, and myself, my wife, and our 2 kids, we left Australia 2 years ago, and we've been traveling ever since, and we've decided to settle here in Penang, and we have a whole bunch of reasons on why we did that. And if you subscribe to the channel, you can find out more about that. So why Malaysia? Out of all the countries in the world we could have come to, why Malaysia? Well, it's quite simple, really. I personally think Malaysia is one of the best destinations for families specifically. Now, it depends on what you're looking for. Obviously, if you're looking for the party vibes, if you're looking for the red light districts and things like that, Malaysia is not for you. But if you're looking for a destination that's really family friendly and has a heap to do as families, where you're never going to get bored, Malaysia is the place. Now, obviously, Malaysia is a big country and it's a diverse country. It's got a lot of different places you can settle. And we've pretty much explored everything except for the East Coast. So we've been to Borneo, we've been to Sarawak and Sabah, we've been to JB, which is next to Singapore. We've obviously been to KL, we've been to Ipoh, we've been all over the place. And like I said, we decided Penang was the place. But before I get into why Penang specifically, I want to talk about why we chose Malaysia over Australia. Okay, so the first reason, which is effectively the elephant in the room, and I'm not going to beat around the bush, it's one of the main reasons we did it, is because as a person coming from the West, like ourselves coming from Australia, the cost of living is really good here in Malaysia. As of recording this right now, for every Australian dollar, you get 3 ringgit, which is the currency here in Malaysia. And that arbitrage allows you to live a quality of life over here that you may not been able to achieve in your home country. So for us, for instance, it costs us $2,250 a month to live as a family, doing pretty much everything. We don't miss out on much. We live in a beautiful place. We have a car. We go out and do sports. I do Muay Thai 3 times a week. The kids do sports every single day. We go out and have dinner twice a week. We go out and have lunches. We don't miss out on anything, and we're spending less than $2,500 a month all in to be able to do that. Now, if we were to live the life that we're living right now in Australia, you could almost double that, especially with the sports and the amount of activities we do outside of just the basics to live. We'd easily be spending $4,000 to $5,000 a month in Australia, and probably closer to $6,000 if you include rent. So guys, just before I continue, there's been a lot of you asking about how logistically we did this move and how we did this trip. If you're interested in learning more about that, just go into the description of this video, hit the Instagram link, hit us up, and we'll see if we can help you out if you are serious about potentially leaving Australia and moving somewhere else. Okay, let's get back to the video. So the next reason we did choose Malaysia over a lot of other places is because there is so much to do for families here. You got to remember that Malaysia is a predominantly Muslim country. And because it is a Muslim country, drinking is not as big a thing here. And because of that, there's so many things going on all the time here at all different times of the day. So in every mall, every weekend, there's some activity happening inside the malls. There's like events running for kids. There's events running for adults. There's fun runs happening all over the place. There's so much happening here because, quite frankly, without alcohol, people have to entertain themselves some other way. And that lends itself really well to families because the family unit is really important here in Malaysia, and families go out and do things together. So there's a lot of things to do as families here in Malaysia. And I would argue that there is in Australia as well, but the cost of doing that stuff in Australia makes it prohibitively expensive to do on a regular basis. And the thing is, with a lot of the activities here in Malaysia, if they're not free, they're quite affordable. So it means you can go and do more things as a family. And that's one thing we absolutely love about Malaysia. Now, the next reason we settled on Malaysia over all the other places we've been to that we could have settled down in is safety. I have never felt safer than I have in Southeast Asia, and that goes for Australia. I would never walk around in our hometown past 8 o'clock at night. I would never walk around. I would always drive because you never know what druggo is around the corner. You never know what homeless dude is gonna bash you for your wallet or your phone. I was always worried about that. I'm a big guy too. I'm 115 kilos and 6'2". And I do Muay Thai. I know how to defend myself. But I was always scared of that because it doesn't matter how well you fight. If someone pulls a knife on you, it doesn't matter how good you are at Muay Thai. It's irrelevant. I've never felt unsafe here in Malaysia. And I don't know whether it's a cultural thing. I don't know what it is. Because there is petty crime here. There's theft. There's all the stuff that you get in any big country. But I just feel a lot safer here. And I think the reason for that is that there's activity at all hours of the night. If you look out my window at 11 o'clock at night, there's still families walking around. There's still couples on the beach. There's people doing things. And because of that, there's less serious crime. And because there's no alcohol, there's less alcohol-related crime here, which is a big thing. I think also too that there's a cultural aspect, and the whole face thing of Southeast Asia really sort of lends itself to, for the sake of your family, you don't want to be caught committing a serious crime like rape or, you know, any crime for that matter, because they'll parade you along the streets and your family will be shamed. And for a lot of people, that's a worse sentence than going to prison or going to jail. Is like the family is everything here. And because of that, they don't want people, like, you don't want to be the one that brings shame to your family. Whereas sometimes I feel like in Australia, a lot of people don't care about that. So I really do feel a lot safer here in Malaysia, especially with my kids out at nighttime. I feel comfortable walking back at 9 o'clock at night from the beach here back to our house, knowing full well that even if we walk down a dark alley, the chances of something happening to us are very, very small. Whereas in Australia, you just don't know. All it takes is some guy that's drunk to be walking home at the same time as you, glance an eye at you, and all of a sudden you're in a fight or, you know, you're in trouble. And that scares me. And the whole of the Western world is moving that way. I will say this though, we don't display wealth. You can see I don't have my wedding ring on. We don't display wealth. I don't have a nice watch. I don't have my wedding ring on or anything like that. So maybe we don't attract as much attention as other expats. And like Australia, common sense prevails. You don't flash wealth because you're just asking to get that crime happen to you. You just become a target. So we try and avoid being a target. So the next reason we chose Malaysia to settle over everywhere else we've been to is the climate. Malaysia is actually a reasonably stable country from a geography perspective. There's no active volcanoes. It's not on the ring of fire like the Philippines, especially. There's very few natural disasters that happen here except during monsoon season when it floods. So that was a big tick for us, because the worst case scenario for us is we're in the Philippines and all of a sudden a big volcano erupts, or there's a massive monsoon that washes everything out. Obviously in Australia, we're very lucky we don't have that kind of thing. So I wanted to make sure that my kids were safe and we're going to a country where the geography risk was low. I would also say that Malaysia has some of the cleanest air in Southeast Asia. Now, it's not as clean as Australia, admittedly, but it's very clean relative to the rest of Southeast Asia. There's some places in Southeast Asia where you can't even open the windows. Whereas unless Indonesia is burning or unless there is burning happening around, the air quality is not due to pollution. It's mainly due to people burning things off, like big plantations and things like that. Unless that's happening, the air quality is generally pretty good. You might lose a few days a year due to air quality, but the rest of the time is like this, crystal clear. I don't necessarily know why Malaysia's air quality is so much better than the rest of Southeast Asia. It might be location. It could be the fact that there's only 30 or so million people in Malaysia. So it's population-wise, it's a lot less than, say, the Philippines, which has about 100 million. That could be the reason as well. I would say the next thing about Malaysia that we really like is that the whole vibe here is really nice. And look, to be fair, the rest of Southeast Asia is like this as well. And I know that sounds terrible because there is a lot of nice people in Australia, but like when we went back to Australia for 2 months, I was used to like walking down the street and waving to people and saying hello. In our local suburb in Australia, I would wave and people would just actively ignore me. Now, they're probably going about their day. The last thing they want to do is have to say hello to me. It does take away a bit of the shine when everyone's so invested in their own interests. Whereas here, you walk down the street, I'm waving to people, I'm waving to little kids, I'm saying hello to people, and everyone's saying hello back. You know, we're not having full conversations, but it's nice to know. It feels a little bit more like a community vibe. And I do genuinely feel like everyone is watching out for everyone here. You know, when you're walking down the street, people are keeping an eye to make sure you're okay, and vice versa. Like, there was a lady at the mall who collapsed the other day, and there would have been 50 people around her helping her out, you know, in whatever capacity there was. People stopping cars on the street. It was bedlam. It was almost too many people helping. But look, a few good Samaritans would jump out and help people in Australia, but most people are too worried about the health and safety or the insurance side of things or whatever. Whereas here, it's just like everyone's watching out for each other. She was an elderly lady, and no word of a lie, there would have been 50, 60 people helping her, trying to, in whatever capacity they can. Same if there's car accidents. There was a motorcycle that had an accident just down here, and the other motorcycles all stopped and made like a barrier around him of motorcycles. Like pretty much as soon as the accident happened, they all just like lined up around him in like a semicircle to make sure that no one ran into him. And there was people in there helping. And when the ambulance came, guys moved their motorcycles out of the way. Everyone's just like kind of looking out for each other. And, you know, during car accidents and things like that in Australia, people help out. But there is this genuine fear that you could do something wrong and get sued. Whereas I don't know if that is the case over here. And just a quick note, guys, if you're enjoying this video, make sure to subscribe to the channel as we're sharing all kinds of tips and tricks and stories about this little adventure we're on. Now, let's get back to the video. Now, another reason we chose Malaysia over pretty much everywhere else in Southeast Asia is the food. Now, the food in Southeast Asia is incredible. It doesn't actually matter where you go. The food is really good. But I would say that the diversity of food here is something else. Penang is known as one of the food capitals of Southeast Asia. People know that. But the rest of Malaysia has incredible food as well. It's because there's so many different cultures that live here and have bedded down over many generations. You have Malaysians, you have Chinese, you have Indians, and there's lots of fusions between different types of meals. Now, it is a Muslim country, so it is a little bit harder to find pork. You just have to know where to look. If you go to Chinese food courts, you will find pork. If you want Western meals, you can just find Western tacos. The diversity of food here is really good, and the food quality is amazing here. I will say this though, it is easier in Australia to do the shopping and do your local shop, just because those brands that you're used to in Australia are a lot harder to find here because generally they're imported, but you can find local alternatives that are just as good. You just need to know what they are and where to look for them. But I would say that of all the countries we travel to, I would say that Malaysia has the best diversity of food at the balance of affordability as well, because I would say that like South Korea and Japan, the quality of the food is better there, but you're also paying a lot more for that food. And obviously in Australia, it has some of the best food quality in the world, but you're also paying a significant margin for that quality. Whereas here, there's a good balance between diversity, quality, and affordability, which is like a little sweet Goldilocks zone because it allows us to eat out more often and eat high quality food more often, not just Burger King or McDonald's. We're eating out at local food courts and getting delicious meals for like $3 a person, $4 a person. Okay, so that's some of the reasons why we chose Malaysia specifically. Now let's talk about why we chose Penang over, say, Kuala Lumpur, which is the capital of Malaysia. Why did we choose Penang? Well, really, it comes down to a couple of things. Firstly, Penang has this really awesome island vibe. It's on an island. Penang Island is an island, and it still has the island vibe. You know, you ride around and you see people on their scooters. I don't know, it's hard to explain. Kuala Lumpur was super busy. Kuala Lumpur is busy, there's lots of traffic, there's people going in all directions, and there's highways everywhere. In Penang, yeah, it's a little bit more difficult to get around because the major freeways in Penang are few and far between, but everyone is so spread out around the island. Like we're in a place called Batu Ferringhi, which is on the back end of the island, which is its own little township on Penang Island. And it's got its own little vibe. It's a really nice vibe. It's a little bit more relaxed here, which suits us as Australians because where we lived in Australia was a little bit more relaxed as well. I think the other reason we chose Penang is the ocean views. In KL, you're looking over a sea of people, especially if you live in one of the big towers, you're looking literally in all directions at millions of people. Whereas here, we have a 180-degree view of the ocean, and it's nice to just look out at the ocean and just look at the cruise ships going past and, you know, look at the otters and stuff that pop up. When we were in KL for a few months, it was awesome to look at all the traffic and all the activity, but it's just like bedlam. In my opinion, it creates anxiety, which looking at the ocean, it reduces anxiety. It creates less stress. So that's part of the reason we chose Penang as well. And Penang is self-contained. It's not a small island. It's got all the things you need from infrastructure. It's got major hospitals. It's got an airport that we can fly directly back to Australia in. It's got several shopping malls. It's got all the facilities here. Everything can be done on the island. You don't actually have to leave Penang Island, really, unless you have to go to KL. But you can literally do everything you could do in KL here. You just don't have as much variety and choice, but it's all on the island. You don't have to leave the island. if you don't want to, which we really liked as well, because we looked at other places in Southeast Asia that have this like island vibe, but there's no infrastructure. You go out to some of the islands in the Philippines and yeah, it's a way better view and the water's more clearer or bluer or whatever, but there's not even a hospital. There's not even a doctor's surgery on some of these islands. So that scared us. But that's the opposite of Penang. It's got the views. It may not be the best ocean in the world, but still calming, still does what ocean does. But you've got access to hospitals, you've got access to specialists, you've got access to all the stuff that you need if you have kids and you're a parent that gets worried occasionally. So those are some of the reasons we chose Penang specifically. And you tie that with all the reasons we chose Malaysia, which is basically the same here in Penang. And you've got a pretty compelling reason to check out Penang as somewhere to live, but also come as a holiday, because all of those apply if you're just coming here for a week or two on a holiday or a vacation. So I would definitely check it out as a holiday destination because it is beautiful. There's a lot to do. There's a lot to see. The kids are going to have a great time and you're going to get a lot of relaxing done. I really get the feeling that when you talk to people, they don't realize Malaysia is a holiday destination. They know of Bali, they know of Thailand, they know of Vietnam. But when you say, oh, have you tried Malaysia? They're like, oh, no, I haven't really thought of it. And I don't know why. It's a beautiful place in the world. And it's got beautiful people. It's got beautiful food. It's pretty politically stable. And the air quality is good. And there's lots of places to visit and see and do. So I definitely think Australians should really consider coming here. It's cheap to fly as well. Air Asia flies out of Malaysia. So you can get really cheap flights, cheaper than Bali a lot of the time. And yeah, just an amazing place to visit. So that's it, guys. I do have a question though. What other places in Southeast Asia should someone consider if they're thinking of moving from Australia to Southeast Asia? What other places should they consider? Because I wouldn't mind checking out some of these places on a bit of a vacation. So let me know in the comments, what other places should people visit? And of course, guys, I'll catch you in the next video.